Hello, my dear friend. I'm so happy that you are here with me tonight. I hope you are feeling calm and ready for a peaceful time together. If you are listening while lying in bed, make yourself as comfortable as possible. Take a deep breath, let your shoulders relax, and feel the softness of your pillow. This is your time to rest, to let go of stress, and to enjoy a gentle story from the Bible told in the most soothing way. Before we begin, I would love to know where you are listening from. Please share it in the comments because I truly enjoy knowing where my friends around the world are joining me. It makes me so happy to imagine people from many countries listening to these comforting stories. So tell me in the comments, are you listening from a quiet countryside, a big city, a warm tropical island, or somewhere with cool, fresh air? Also, if you enjoy this kind of peaceful storytelling, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who would love to listen too. It really helps the channel grow so that I can bring you more calming stories every week. Now, tonight, I have a very beautiful story for you. It is a short passage in the Bible, but it is so deep and full of meaning. It is the story of the two women who came before King Solomon with a very difficult question. This story is found in the book of 1 Kings, chapter 3, verses 16 to 28. It is a story about wisdom, love, and truth. The story takes place long ago, in the days of King Solomon. Solomon was the son of King David, and he became the king of Israel after his father. The Bible tells us that Solomon was known for his incredible wisdom. People from many nations came just to hear his judgments and his wise words. But his wisdom was not his own doing. It was a gift from God because Solomon asked for it with a sincere heart. Before we enter the story of the two women, we will take a little time to imagine what life was like in those days and how Solomon came to have such wisdom. Then, we will go slowly through the story, allowing every detail to sink in gently, like the sound of a soft breeze on a quiet evening. So, close your eyes if you want to, and imagine a peaceful land. The sun is warm but gentle, shining over hills and valleys. There are olive trees and vineyards. People live in small houses made of stone and clay. Life is simple, with no loud machines, no fast cars, just the sound of voices, animals, and nature. In the center of this land is the beautiful city of Jerusalem, and in that city there is the royal palace where King Solomon sits to judge the people and guide the nation. This is where our story will take place. It will be calm and gentle, even though it involves a matter of great importance. Two women will come to Solomon, both claiming to be the mother of the same baby, and Solomon will need to decide the truth. His answer will surprise everyone, and it will show the wisdom that God gave him. As you listen, allow yourself to feel safe and relaxed. This story is not rushed. It will unfold slowly, like a calm river flowing through a quiet valley. Every word is here to bring peace to your heart. Now, take another deep breath. Let it out slowly. Feel your body becoming lighter, your mind settling into rest. We are about to begin the first part of the story. King Solomon was still a young man when the great responsibility of ruling a nation came upon him. His father, King David, had been a mighty warrior, a shepherd, and a poet who loved God with all his heart. The kingdom that David left behind was strong and blessed, but it was also filled with many people who needed guidance and justice. When Solomon looked at the throne and thought about the work ahead, he must have felt the weight pressing gently on his heart. He was not just a leader of soldiers or a keeper of treasures. He was a shepherd for the people, someone who had to lead with care and wisdom. One night, something extraordinary happened that changed Solomon's life forever. It was quiet in the land. The stars shone brightly in the sky above Jerusalem, and the palace rested in calm silence. Solomon lay asleep when the Lord God appeared to him in a dream. Imagine that moment. The voice of God, gentle yet full of majesty, spoke to Solomon and said, "Ask for whatever you want me to give you." Those words were like a beautiful melody, soft yet powerful. God himself was offering Solomon anything his heart desired. He could have asked for riches beyond measure, gold that would fill the palace rooms, and treasures that no one in the world could match. He could have asked for power, for his enemies to fall before him, for a kingdom that stretched across the earth. He could have asked for long life, for health and comfort, and everything the world calls good. But Solomon's heart was different. He wanted something deeper, something that would help him serve others and please God. So, in that quiet and holy dream, Solomon answered with great humility. He said, "Lord, you have shown great kindness to my father David, and you have made me king in his place. But I am only a little child in understanding. I do not know how to carry out my duties. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too many to count. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong." Those words were filled with humility and love. Solomon was not thinking about himself. He was thinking about the people and about doing what was right. And God, who looks at the heart, was pleased. The Lord said to Solomon, "Because you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have you asked for the death of your enemies, but for understanding to discern justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be." But God did not stop there. In his goodness, he said, "Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for, both wealth and honor, so that in your lifetime you will have no equal among kings. And if you walk in obedience to me and keep my commands as David your father did, I will give you a long life." When Solomon woke up from that dream, he realized it had been a holy encounter with God. The next morning, his heart was filled with peace and gratitude. He went to Jerusalem, stood before the Ark of the Covenant, and offered sacrifices and fellowship offerings to the Lord. And from that day forward, the wisdom of Solomon began to shine like the morning light over the hills of Israel. Word began to spread throughout the land that the young king had a special gift from heaven. His judgments were fair and full of truth. People marveled at how he could listen patiently, think deeply, and then speak words that brought peace. His throne became a place where the people felt safe to bring their troubles. From the smallest matters to the greatest, Solomon listened and judged with care. Imagine the great hall of the palace in those early days. Sunlight streaming through high windows, soft curtains moving in the gentle breeze, and the fragrance of fresh cedar wood from the great beams above. There were guards standing quietly, servants moving softly, and counselors ready to assist. And there, upon the royal seat, sat Solomon, calm and steady, with eyes that seemed to see not only what was said, but what was hidden in the heart. Many came to him with questions about land, about animals, about business agreements. Some came because of quarrels among neighbors or families, and one by one Solomon listened. He never rushed, never raised his voice. His manner was calm, his words like cool water on a hot day. People left his presence feeling understood and satisfied, because his judgments were not only wise, they were gentle and fair. And then, one day, something happened that would make Solomon's name known far beyond his kingdom. 2 women would come to him with a case unlike any other, a case so delicate and full of sorrow that it would require not only wisdom, but also deep understanding of the heart. This is the story we will soon enter. But for now, let us pause and reflect on the beauty of this moment. Solomon did not become wise by his own strength. He became wise because he asked God for help. This teaches us something very precious. When we feel small, when we feel unsure, when the weight of life is heavy, we can also pray for wisdom. And God, who gave wisdom to Solomon, can guide us too. This thought is like a soft blanket for the soul, bringing comfort and hope. As you rest and listen, imagine the calm atmosphere of Solomon's court. There is no hurry here, no loud voices, only the gentle murmur of people waiting, the soft steps of servants, and the stillness of a king who seeks God in every decision. This is the setting where 2 women will soon enter, carrying a question that seems impossible to answer. Yet through this question, the wisdom of God will shine like the morning sun after a long night. Take a slow, deep breath and let your heart be still. The story is about to unfold, and it will do so gently, like petals opening to the warmth of dawn. The sun rose softly over Jerusalem, painting the city in hues of gold and rose. The air was still cool from the night, carrying the fragrance of olive trees and distant fields. Inside the royal palace, the day began slowly and gracefully. Servants walked quietly along smooth stone floors, carrying water in clay jars and arranging the great hall for the judgments of the king. Everything had its order, its rhythm, its peace. The hall of judgment was a beautiful place. High ceilings with beams of fragrant cedar stretched above, and walls adorned with fine carvings reflected the glory of Israel's king. Light streamed through tall windows, casting warm patterns across the floor. Cushions were placed near the throne, and the seat of the king stood firm and majestic, yet simple enough to show humility before God. Soon, the people began to arrive. They came from many places, each with a need, each with a story. Some came walking along the dusty roads, carrying small gifts for the king. Others rode on donkeys, dressed in robes of simple wool. Their faces showed hope, because this was the place where justice was given. This was where truth was heard. The voices in the hall were gentle, like a low hum. There was no shouting, no harshness, for everyone knew this was a sacred duty. They waited in patience, some whispering prayers, others watching the door where Solomon would enter. Then the king came forth. He was clothed in garments of fine linen, with a robe of royal blue resting upon his shoulders. His face was calm and filled with quiet strength. His eyes were gentle but bright, like the early morning star. As he walked to his seat, the hall grew still. All hearts turned toward him, for in his wisdom they found hope. Solomon sat upon his throne, resting his hands on the carved arms of the seat. He did not look proud or distant. He looked like a shepherd caring for his flock, a father listening to his children. That is why people loved him. His wisdom was great, but his heart was even greater. Case after case was brought before him. Some spoke of fields and boundaries. Others spoke of flocks or agreements. Solomon listened to all, never hurrying, never weary of the details. His words were clear, his judgments fair. And when a matter was settled, peace flowed like a calm river. But then came a moment that was unlike any other. The doors of the hall opened quietly, and two women entered together. They walked slowly, their steps uncertain, their faces marked by sorrow and strain. Their garments were simple, showing they were not wealthy, and their eyes told of many troubles endured. They were women of the street, women who lived on the edge of society. Yet here they were, standing in the hall of the king, seeking justice. People in the hall turned their eyes to them, whispering softly among themselves. Who were these women? What could have brought them here together? But no one spoke loudly, for this was the place of the king, and every case deserved to be heard. The two women came forward, their hands trembling slightly as they stood before the throne. They bowed low, a sign of respect, though their hearts were heavy. Solomon looked at them kindly, inviting them to speak. His voice was calm, like a soft breeze that eases the heat of the day. He said, "Tell me your matter." One of the women stepped forward. Her face was pale, and her eyes were filled with tears that she tried to hold back. She spoke with a voice that trembled, but her words were clear. "My lord," she said, "this woman and I live in the same house. I gave birth to a child while she was there with me. 3 days later, she also gave birth to a child. There were only the two of us in the house." The people listened in silence. Her voice carried sadness, but also truth. She continued, "One night, this woman's child died because she lay on him. So she got up in the night and took my son from my side while I was sleeping. She put her dead child in my arms and took the living child to her bed. When I rose in the morning to nurse my son, he was dead. But when I looked at him closely, I saw that it was not the son I had borne." At these words, the woman stepped back, her chest rising and falling as if the weight of her grief was almost too much to bear. She held her hands together tightly, as though holding back a cry. The hall remained silent, the air heavy with the sorrow of her story. Then the other woman stepped forward. Her face was set with determination, her eyes sharp and fixed. She said firmly, "Number, the living child is mine, and the dead one is yours." Her tone was strong, almost fierce, like a shield raised in battle. But the first woman, her voice breaking, answered, "No, the dead one is yours, and the living one is mine." Back and forth they spoke, each claiming the living child, their voices rising, though not in anger but in desperation. For both were clinging to hope, to something they could not let go. Solomon lifted his hand gently, and the voices grew still. His eyes rested on them, calm and steady, like the sea on a quiet day. He said softly, "You say," this one says, "the living child is mine, and the dead one is yours." And the other says, "No, the dead one is yours, and the living one is mine." The people watched in silence. This was no ordinary case. There were no witnesses, no signs, no way to know the truth by sight alone. 2 women, 2 voices, 1 living child. How could anyone decide? Yet Solomon did not look troubled. There was no sign of fear or confusion on his face. Instead, there was a stillness, like deep waters that hide a secret strength. For in that stillness was wisdom, a wisdom that came from God. He sat quietly for a moment, letting the silence settle like soft dust upon the floor. Then he spoke, and his words would soon echo through all the land, remembered for generations to come. Solomon's eyes remained steady, watching the 2 women closely. The hall was still, every person waiting to hear what the king would decide. The tension was quiet but palpable, like the hush before a gentle rainfall. Each woman's heart was heavy, yet each held on to hope, praying silently that justice would come. Then Solomon called softly, yet firmly, for a sword to be brought. The soldiers nearby moved with careful precision, carrying the shining blade across the smooth floor. The air seemed to grow heavier, and the people leaned forward, watching as the king prepared to speak. He said, "Divide the living child in 2, and give half to 1 woman and half to the other." The words hung in the hall, calm but heavy, and the 2 women froze. For a moment, the room was so quiet, it seemed that even the walls held their breath. The woman who was the true mother gasped, her hands trembling as she reached toward the child. "No," she said, "my lord, give her the living child. Do not harm him. I would rather let him go than see him killed." Her voice was soft but urgent, full of love and desperation. She could not bear the thought of the child being divided. Every fiber of her being ached to protect him. The other woman's face remained hard, her eyes fixed on the king. She said calmly, "Neither I nor you shall have him. Divide him." Her words were steady, almost indifferent, as if she did not feel the same bond, the same fierce love for the child. At that moment, Solomon's wisdom became clear. He had been observing not only their words, but the hearts behind them. He saw the deep, unselfish love in the first woman, the mother who would rather lose her child than see him harmed. And he saw the absence of such love in the second woman, who valued her claim more than the child's life. Solomon spoke again, his voice calm and certain. "Give the living child to the first woman. Do not harm him. She is his mother." A wave of relief passed through the hall. The mother reached for her child, holding him close to her chest. Her tears fell softly, and a gentle smile broke across her face. The child, feeling her warmth and hearing her heartbeat, nestled into her arms, safe once more. The other woman remained silent. Her plan and claim had been revealed, but there was no shame spoken aloud. The truth had been quietly revealed, and she left the hall without protest. The people in the court were amazed. They had witnessed a case that seemed impossible to solve, yet Solomon had found the truth. His judgment was precise, fair, and compassionate. The story of the two women and the living child would be remembered for generations, a demonstration of the wisdom that God had given him. After the judgment, life in the palace returned to its peaceful rhythm. The mother carried her child out of the hall, safe and whole, her heart light with relief. The hall itself seemed to hold a sense of calm, as if the walls had absorbed the wisdom and fairness that had just been displayed. News of Solomon's judgment spread quickly throughout Jerusalem. People told one another about the case of the two women and the child. They spoke of the king's wisdom, his calm presence, and his understanding of the human heart. Traders, shepherds, and travelers carried the story from village to village, and Solomon's reputation grew even greater. From that day, those who came to seek judgment knew that Solomon would not only listen but also understand the true desires of the heart. His throne became a place where fairness and truth were certain. People brought matters to him that could not be resolved elsewhere, knowing that he would see through deceit and uncover honesty with gentleness. The mother, holding her child close, returned home. She cared for him tenderly, grateful for the mercy and justice of the king. Every day, as the sun rose and set, she remembered the moment when wisdom had saved her child. The memory was not one of fear but of awe, a quiet and steady acknowledgement of God's work through Solomon. Meanwhile, Solomon continued to sit upon his throne, listening and judging with care. Cases came and went, each one treated with equal attention, but the story of the two women and the living child remained in the minds of all who had witnessed it. It was a reminder that wisdom is more than knowledge, more than clever words. It is the ability to see into the heart, to act with understanding, and to protect life with compassion. As the days passed, people from far and near continued to come to Solomon. The king's wisdom became known not only in Israel but beyond its borders. Kings and rulers from distant lands sent envoys to hear his judgments and to see for themselves the peace and fairness that flowed from his throne. And so the quiet palace of Jerusalem was filled with a soft hum of life, the movement of people, the sound of soft voices, and the steady presence of a king whose heart was guided by God. The story of the two women, the child, and Solomon's wisdom became a living example of divine insight and human compassion. The mother cherished her child, knowing that his life had been preserved by truth and love. The child grew under her care, safe and nurtured, never forgetting the mercy shown that day. And Solomon continued to reign with wisdom, his judgments bringing peace to all who came before him, his heart always seeking the guidance of God. Thus, the story of the two women is not only a story of judgment, but also a story of love, protection, and understanding. It shows how wisdom can see beyond appearances, how compassion can guide decisions, and how truth will always find a way to shine when guided by a heart that seeks it faithfully. After the judgment had been passed, the hall remained quiet for a moment. as if everyone present needed time to take in the weight and depth of what had just occurred. The mother held her child close, her tears falling slowly, her heart finally at peace. She felt a warmth in her chest that no words could describe, a gentle, steady sense of relief and gratitude. The child, safe in her arms, cooed softly, responding to the rhythm of her heartbeat and the gentle hum of life around him. All eyes turned towards Solomon, the young king whose presence had filled the room with quiet authority. There was awe in the faces of those who had witnessed the scene. They understood, even if they did not fully know how, that the king's wisdom had reached beyond mere words. It had touched the human heart, recognizing the love that was invisible to the eye but clear to the mind, guided by God. The people whispered softly to one another, murmurs of amazement traveling like a gentle wind through the hall. Many of them were common folk, shepherds, traders, and villagers who rarely had reason to visit the palace. Yet today they had seen a judgment unlike any other. They had seen a king who could discern truth where others could only see conflict. Word of this extraordinary case spread quickly, moving beyond the palace walls and through the streets of Jerusalem. People told their neighbors, friends, and family. Travelers carried the story to nearby towns and villages. By the evening, merchants in the marketplace were speaking of the judgment of King Solomon and the two women with the child. They marveled at the precision and gentleness with which the king had solved a problem that no one else could untangle. The story traveled far and wide. Leaders from distant lands heard of the young king who could see into the hearts of people. They sent envoys with gifts and messages, eager to meet Solomon and witness his wisdom firsthand. The palace of Jerusalem became not just a seat of political authority, but a sanctuary of justice, where disputes could be resolved peacefully and truth could shine clearly. As for the mother, life slowly returned to a quiet rhythm. She nurtured her child with gentle care, tending to him with tenderness and unwavering devotion. Each day, as she prepared his meals, cradled him in her arms, and watched him sleep, she recalled the day when wisdom had preserved his life. She remembered the moment when the king's insight had revealed her love as the truest guide. And in her heart, she knew that life had granted her a gift beyond measure, the safety and life of her child. The child grew in her care, safe and healthy. His early days were filled with warmth, gentle laughter, and the small rhythms of daily life. The mother never forgot the fear that had gripped her heart, nor the relief that had washed over her when Solomon had spoken the words that saved him. She often told the story to him in quiet tones, not as a tale of sorrow, but as a story of protection, love, and the careful judgment that preserved life. Meanwhile, within the palace, Solomon continued to sit upon his throne, listening and judging with clarity and patience. Cases came to him daily, some simple, some complex. Disputes over land, disagreements over trade, conflicts between neighbors, and questions of inheritance all were brought before him, and every time he judged with calm precision, his words reflecting not only knowledge but insight into the human heart. The story of the two women became a guiding example for all who came to the palace. When people arrived with difficult problems, they recalled the judgment that had revealed truth without harm. They trusted in Solomon's ability to perceive what was right and fair, and they approached him with hope and respect. For they knew that a case brought to Solomon would be met not with anger or rashness, but with wisdom, patience, and compassion. Even the court officials and the attendants who worked in the palace were deeply moved by the story. They spoke of the young king's understanding and of the subtle but powerful ways he could perceive what others could not. They recognized that this wisdom was a gift from God, a guiding light that illuminated not only the judgments of the court but also the very life of the nation. As the days and months passed, the influence of Solomon's judgment became ever more evident. The people learned to resolve smaller disputes among themselves, inspired by the principle that love and careful thought could guide actions. The stories of his judgments were told in homes and marketplaces, and parents shared them with children, teaching them lessons about fairness, compassion, and understanding. The palace itself remained a place of calm and order. Guards moved quietly, servants carried out their duties with care, and the halls echoed softly with the gentle steps of those who came to bring their cases. There was a rhythm to the life of the court, a pattern of quiet dignity that reflected the wisdom of the king. Visitors from other lands continued to arrive, bringing gifts, messages, and questions. They marveled at the peacefulness of the palace and the clarity of Solomon's mind. Many of them left deeply impressed, carrying stories of his wisdom to their own lands. The fame of Solomon's understanding spread far beyond the borders of Israel, and people came from distant nations seeking guidance, eager to witness the judgment that had saved the life of the living child. Through all of this, the child of the two women grew, nurtured by the gentle care of his mother. He learned of the power of love and protection, and of the quiet strength that can guide the actions of the heart. Though he did not fully understand the events of that day in his earliest years, the safety and care he received were living proof of the wisdom that had preserved him. The story of Solomon and the two women became a symbol of what true wisdom looks like. It was a wisdom that could see beyond appearances, understand hidden motives, and act with compassion. It showed that knowledge alone is not enough, and that the heart must guide judgment to protect life and reveal truth. And so, the Palace of Jerusalem continued its work. People came, disputes were resolved, lives were preserved, and the quiet dignity of the king's court set an example for all. The sun rose and set over the city, each day bringing new cases, new lessons, and new demonstrations of Solomon's wisdom. The mother cherished her child, grateful every day for the justice that had been given. She taught him gently about the importance of love, honesty, and patience. She shared with him the story of Solomon's judgment, not as a tale of fear, but as a story of care and the power of God's guidance working through a wise heart. And throughout the land, the story remained alive. People remembered the judgment, told it to their children, and carried it in their hearts as an example of how life, love, and wisdom can work together to bring peace and understanding. Thus, the tale of the two women and the living child became more than a moment in history. It became a lesson in the eternal value of discernment, compassion, and truth. And in this gentle, flowing life of the palace, the presence of wisdom continued to shine, guiding the people, preserving the innocent, and creating a legacy that would be remembered for generations. The room remained still after the women had finished speaking. Their voices had faded, yet the memory of their words lingered in the air like the echo of a distant sound. King Solomon sat upon his throne, his eyes steady and calm, his heart seeking wisdom from the Lord who had promised to guide him. He looked at the two women, and though their words had been filled with conflict, he saw more than their anger. He saw their fear. He saw their longing. He saw the deep ache of a mother's love that would fight for the life of her child. The light from the tall windows drifted softly into the hall, casting golden shapes on the floor. The courtiers stood silently on either side, their faces solemn, for they knew the weight of this matter. It was not only about a child, it was about justice. It was about truth. How could one judge rightly when there were no witnesses, when there was no proof except the cries of two mothers? Yet the king did not hurry. He did not allow impatience to enter his thoughts. Instead, he sat still, like a great tree rooted by the waters, unmoved by the storm around it. The first woman, the one who had spoken first, stood with her hands clasped tightly before her. Her eyes were red from weeping. She kept looking at the small living child, and at times her lips trembled as if she longed to call out to him. The second woman stood a little apart. Her face was tense, her eyes sharp. She, too, kept glancing at the child, and though her expression was guarded, there was a flicker of something, perhaps fear, perhaps pride hidden behind her gaze. The living child was quiet. He rested in the arms of a servant near the throne. His little face was calm, unaware of the struggle that had brought him into this great hall. His tiny fingers curled gently, and now and then he made a soft sound, like the murmur of a dove. That sound touched the heart of every person present, for even those who did not speak felt the tenderness of such innocence. King Solomon lowered his eyes for a moment, as though listening within himself. He remembered the night when God had appeared to him in Gibeon, saying, "Ask what I shall give you." And he had asked for wisdom to govern the people. And now here was wisdom's test, not in the matter of wealth or power, but in the cry of a mother and the life of a child. The court waited. The silence was long, yet it was not empty. It was filled with expectation, for everyone knew the king would speak soon. His judgments were known to be clear and full of understanding. The people of Israel had already begun to trust the gift God had given him. But this case was unlike any other. There were no facts to weigh, no scrolls to read, no witnesses to call. It was a matter of the heart, hidden deep, where only God could see. At last, Solomon raised his eyes. His voice was calm, and even when he spoke, and every ear in the room bent to hear, he repeated the words, not as a question now, but as a statement for all to remember. This woman says, "The living child is mine, and your son is dead." And the other says, "No, but your son is dead, and mine is the living one. This is what you have said before me." The women listened, their faces tense. The king's words fell like gentle rain, steady and clear. He paused for a moment, then looked toward the servant who held the child. The little one stirred slightly, and the servant cradled him closer. Then Solomon spoke again, his voice as calm as before. "Bring me a sword," he said. The words floated through the stillness like a ripple across water. There was a movement among the guards, and one stepped forward, bowing low, then turned to bring what the king had asked for. A sword in the Hall of Judgment, such a thing had not been seen before. The courtiers exchanged quiet glances, yet none spoke aloud. They trusted the king, for his wisdom had already shone in many matters, and they waited to see what he would do. The first woman's breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened, and she looked at the king with sudden fear. The second woman's face remained unreadable, yet her hands shifted slightly at her sides. Neither spoke, for the command had not yet been explained. The guard returned, carrying the sword with both hands. It gleamed in the soft light, a sharp and silent thing. He came near to the throne and knelt, presenting it to the king. Solomon looked upon the sword for a brief moment, then lifted his eyes once more to the women. His face was serene, his gaze unwavering. "Take the living child," he said, "and divide him in two, and give half to the one and half to the other." The words fell upon the hall like the sudden hush before a storm. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The women stood frozen, and even the courtiers drew in their breath. But Solomon's face did not change. He spoke as if giving an ordinary order, his voice calm and without anger. The servant who held the child hesitated, looking toward the throne with wide eyes. Surely the king did not mean to harm the innocent little one. Yet no one dared to question the command, for to question the king was not their place. And in that moment, the hearts of the two women were revealed. The first woman's face crumpled with sudden anguish. Her hands flew to her chest as though to shield her heart from the unimaginable thought. The idea of her child being harmed, even by the hand of the king, was unbearable. "No, my lord," she cried, her voice trembling with desperation, yet full of love that reached beyond words. "Do not harm him. Give him to her, but let him live. Please, my child must not die." Her words hung in the air, filled with a deep, selfless love. Every eye in the hall felt the truth in her cry, the instinct of a mother who would rather suffer herself than see her child harmed. Her body trembled, and tears began to fall silently down her cheeks, tracing paths of fear, devotion, and hope. The second woman, however, showed a different heart. She looked at the sword and then at the child, and her face was unreadable, almost hard. A strange calm seemed to settle in her expression, as if the thought of losing the child was less terrifying than the pain of giving it up. "Divide him," she said quietly, her voice steady, though there was an edge that carried firmness. "Neither of us shall have him if he cannot be shared." At that moment, the truth was clear to Solomon. The mother's love, which would surrender her claim rather than see her child harmed, revealed the living child's true mother. The other woman's claim, bold and unyielding even in the face of danger, spoke of a heart not bound by the same selfless devotion. Solomon leaned slightly forward, his eyes never leaving the faces of the women. "Bring me the child," he commanded softly. A servant approached and handed the little one to the king, who held him gently, carefully, with both hands. The child stirred, sensing warmth and safety in the strong yet tender grasp of the king. Then, Solomon spoke, his voice calm but full of the quiet authority that only wisdom could give. Give the living child to the first woman. Do not harm him. She is his mother. The hall seemed to breathe with relief. The first woman fell to her knees, gathering the child to her chest. She pressed her lips to his forehead and whispered thanks to God, her tears falling freely, yet her heart overflowing with peace. The little one cooed softly, as though sensing the love and protection surrounding him. The second woman, who had insisted on dividing the child, drew back. Her face was pale, and for a moment a shadow of shame passed over her features. She understood that her claim had been revealed for what it was, and though she had spoken boldly, the truth had come to light without harm, without anger, and without judgment beyond wisdom. Those who had witnessed the scene felt a deep stillness settle over them. The judgment was not harsh. The innocent had been protected. The guilty had not been punished beyond the revelation of truth, and the power of discernment, given by God, had shone through, leaving every heart in the hall filled with awe. Solomon returned the child to the arms of his true mother, and she held him close, whispering promises and prayers. "You are safe now, my little one," she murmured, her voice soft and full of gentle rhythm, a lullaby in the quiet court. "Nothing will harm you. You are mine, and I am yours." The child responded with a small, contented sigh, curling into her embrace. And in that moment, the hall felt lighter. Every person present understood that wisdom had preserved life, that justice had been tempered with mercy, and that the love of a mother had been recognized and honored. Word of Solomon's judgment spread quickly through Jerusalem. People spoke of the child returned to his mother and of the king who could discern truth in ways no ordinary man could. Travelers, merchants, and villagers would tell the story for years to come, speaking of a king whose wisdom was guided by God and whose heart understood the deepest motions of love. As for the mother, she returned home with her child cradled in her arms. Each day, she remembered the quiet strength of Solomon's words, and she nurtured her child with gentle care, teaching him about kindness, truth, and love. She shared the story with him as he grew, not as a tale of fear, but as a reminder of how wisdom, compassion, and courage can preserve what is precious. And within the palace, Solomon continued to judge with patience and clarity, his reputation growing far and wide. Leaders came from distant lands, eager to witness his wisdom and to learn from a heart guided by God. The story of the two women and the child became a lasting example of discernment and love, a tale that echoed through generations as a reminder that true wisdom sees beyond appearances and recognizes the heart. Even in the quiet moments of the palace, when no one spoke and only the soft light of the morning streamed through the windows, the memory of that judgment lingered. Servants whispered it to one another. Attendants shared it as a lesson. And the people of Israel remembered that the king's wisdom could reach into the hidden places of the human soul and bring peace where conflict seemed endless. Thus the living child grew safely, nurtured by the love that had been revealed in the king's court. And the story of Solomon's wisdom became more than an account of a single judgment. It became a symbol of how understanding, compassion, and divine insight could work together to protect the innocent and bring clarity to the hearts of all. The Palace of Jerusalem continued its rhythm of quiet life. Each day brought new visitors, new cases, and new lessons. And yet, the story of the two women and the living child remained central in every telling, a testament to the power of God-given wisdom, the strength of a mother's love, and the gentle authority of a king who sought truth above all else. The moment the child was returned safely to his mother, a hush of awe swept through the hall. Even the softest footsteps and the faintest rustle of robes seemed to pause, as though the very air in the palace recognized the weight of what had occurred. People remained in silent reverence, understanding that they had witnessed something extraordinary. It was not merely a judgment. It was the unveiling of a heart, the quiet revelation of truth, and the preservation of life through wisdom. The first woman, her face still wet with tears, held her child close. She rocked him gently, whispering soft words of comfort, repeating promises she could now keep. The baby cooed and squirmed slightly in response, his tiny hands reaching toward the warmth that enveloped him. The bond between mother and child, tender and steadfast, seemed to shine brighter than the golden rays spilling into the hall from the high windows. The second woman, whose claim had been revealed as false, stepped back quietly. There was no anger, no loud protest, only the silent acknowledgement of truth. Her eyes softened, not with joy but with understanding. She had been confronted with a love greater than her own will, a devotion that could not be shaken by threat or command. She turned and left the hall with measured steps, her mind filled with the quiet realization that the king's wisdom had revealed more than what words could describe. All around the throne, courtiers, guards, and attendants began to breathe again, their shoulders loosening, their hearts filled with a gentle relief. They had seen judgment done in a way that was firm but compassionate, clear but gentle. It was a kind of authority that did not strike with force, but moved like water, finding its way into every hidden corner, uncovering truth without causing harm. Word of Solomon's wisdom spread quickly through Jerusalem. People whispered the story in markets, along dusty roads, and at gatherings in homes. Travelers spoke of the king who could see into the hearts of people, who understood the quiet motions of love and fear, and who judged in a way that honored life. It became known that Solomon's throne was not just a seat of power, but a place where truth could be revealed and justice served with divine insight. Visitors arrived from distant cities and even from foreign lands. Merchants, leaders, and travelers came, eager to witness the king's wisdom for themselves. Some brought gifts, hoping to honor the king, but all left with a deeper understanding. They carried with them tales of the child who had been preserved, of the mother whose love had been recognized, and of the quiet strength of a ruler who judged not by appearances, but by the heart. Within the palace, life returned to its gentle rhythm. Guards moved softly along the corridors, servants carried out their duties with care, and the halls echoed with quiet, purposeful steps. Each case that came before the king reminded the people of the lesson of the two women, that wisdom is not only knowledge, but discernment, patience, and the understanding of the human heart. The child grew safely in the care of his true mother. Each day she tended to him with a gentle hand and a patient heart, reminding him with small actions of the protection he had been granted. She sang lullabies softly in the evenings, whispering the story of the day when wisdom preserved his life. Though he could not understand fully in his early years, he felt the warmth, the love, and the security that surrounded him, living proof of the king's insight and God's guiding hand. As Solomon continued to rule, the story of the two women became a standard of understanding throughout the land. People came to see the king not only for legal matters but for guidance in life, for the wisdom he displayed had a way of revealing truth beyond mere words. His judgments became a model for fairness, showing that authority paired with compassion could bring peace where conflict seemed impossible. Parents would tell the story to their children, teaching lessons not of fear or punishment, but of care, love, and the quiet power of discernment. The story reminded everyone that true wisdom seeks to protect the innocent, to honor love, and to reveal what lies hidden in the hearts of people. In the quiet evenings, when the palace was calm and only the soft flicker of lamps lit the halls, the attendants would often speak softly to one another about the day when the judgment of the living child had been given. Even long after the events, the tale remained in their minds, a gentle reminder of the strength of understanding and the importance of seeing beyond the surface. The land itself seemed touched by the story. In villages and cities, people treated one another with a renewed care. Disputes that might have escalated were resolved with patience and thoughtfulness. The knowledge that wisdom could discern truth inspired people to act with honesty and compassion in their own lives. And so, the story of Solomon's judgment did not end in the hall that day. It lived on in the hearts of the people, in the quiet moments of parents with their children, in the measured words of neighbors settling disagreements, and in the gentle rhythm of daily life. It was a story of life preserved, of love honored, and of wisdom guided by God flowing through the hand of a king. The palace continued its work. Cases came and were resolved, and the people marveled not at the power of the throne, but at the insight that had been given to the king. And in this way, Solomon's wisdom became a lasting legacy, teaching that justice, compassion, and discernment are the foundations of a peaceful and thriving land. The story of the living child and the two women continued to ripple quietly through the land. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, yet the memory of that judgment remained vivid in the minds of the people. It was a story not only of life preserved, but of the depth of understanding that could only come from God-given wisdom. The mother held her child close every morning, feeling the warmth of his tiny body against her chest, and she often whispered softly to him about the day when a king had seen into her heart. Her words were gentle and rhythmic, like a lullaby that echoed not only through the walls of their home but also through the quiet corridors of memory. "You are safe, my little one, because truth and love were recognized," she would say, her voice steady and calm, full of the comfort of certainty. In the palace, Solomon continued his work with quiet diligence. Each day brought new matters for judgment, yet the story of the two women remained a guiding example. It reminded everyone present, officials, guards, and visitors alike, of the way wisdom flows through patience, discernment, and an understanding of the heart. Travelers came from distant regions, each eager to see the young king whose name had spread like a gentle wind across the lands. Some arrived carrying gifts of silver, fine fabrics, or rare spices, hoping to honor the man who could perceive truth beyond appearances. Others sought his counsel for disputes and matters of importance, knowing that a single word from Solomon could settle confusion without strife. The people of Jerusalem began to feel the effects of this reputation in their daily lives. Villagers and merchants learned to approach one another with patience and care, inspired by the understanding that true wisdom does not seek to punish but to guide, to reveal truth, and to protect what is precious. Arguments that might have escalated into harsh words or lasting bitterness were instead softened by the principle that had been demonstrated so clearly in the palace. Love and discernment matter most. Inside the palace, a gentle rhythm persisted. Guards walked quietly along the corridors, the soft sound of their sandals echoing across polished stone. Servants moved with careful steps, carrying water, arranging cushions, and tending to the throne room, each action performed with a sense of reverence for the work of the king. Even the windows, which let in the soft morning light, seemed to highlight the calm dignity that flowed through the palace, touching all who entered. The officials who worked closely with Solomon began to understand the subtle ways in which true judgment operates. They saw that wisdom is not just knowledge or cleverness, but the ability to perceive what lies beneath the surface of human hearts. Each case brought before the king was an opportunity to practice patience, to listen fully, and to consider not only the spoken words, but the emotions, motivations, and silent truths that underlie every dispute. The living child, meanwhile, grew in safety and care. Each day brought new experiences, gentle laughter, and the small joys of life nurtured by love. His mother shared stories of the day his life was preserved, not as a tale of sorrow, but as a lesson in understanding, care, and the quiet, powerful ways that wisdom protects the innocent. The child grew not only in body but in spirit. Surrounded by a world where justice and compassion were more than words, they were lived experiences. Across Jerusalem, people often spoke of the judgment as a model for life itself. They told the story in marketplaces, in homes, and at gatherings, emphasizing the gentle strength that had resolved what seemed impossible. Parents told it to children, encouraging them to value truth, love, and patience. Traders spoke of it in quiet moments, reminding each other that understanding and discernment guide relationships as much as they guide judgment. Even foreign leaders who had heard of Solomon's wisdom were moved not merely by the cleverness of the judgment, but by its depth and care. Envoys brought messages of admiration, offering gifts and letters praising the young king for the clarity and compassion he had displayed. The reputation of Jerusalem grew not through fear or force, but through the subtle, far-reaching influence of understanding hearts and careful thought. Within the quiet evenings of the palace, when the sun dipped low behind the hills surrounding the city, the halls would grow still. Lamps were lit, casting soft golden pools of light along the polished floors, and the gentle murmurs of servants and attendants softened to whispers. It was in these moments that the story of the two women seemed to linger most. Courtiers would recall it, not with excitement or fanfare, but with a quiet sense of reverence for the way life had been preserved through insight and compassion. The influence of Solomon's wisdom also shaped the younger generations. Children who heard the story grew up understanding that truth is not always visible, that appearances can be deceiving, and that love and patience reveal what the eye cannot see. They learned that courage and selflessness matter, that sometimes to protect what is precious requires letting go, and that the heart often knows more than words alone can express. And so, the kingdom thrived under the guidance of a king whose judgments were marked by discernment, compassion, and a deep understanding of the human heart. Every decision, small or great, reflected the quiet principle demonstrated in that moment with the two women and the child. That life is sacred, that love is powerful, and that wisdom from God can illuminate even the darkest uncertainties. The city of Jerusalem itself seemed to mirror this calm order. Markets moved in a measured rhythm. Fields beyond the walls produced abundant harvests, and the people felt a quiet trust in the balance and fairness of their ruler. The palace was not just a center of authority, but a place of gentle stability, a sanctuary of thoughtful judgment, where every visitor, whether common or noble, could witness the strength of true wisdom. Thus, the story of the living child and the judgment of Solomon became more than an event. It became a living lesson carried in the hearts of all who heard it. It was a reminder that understanding, patience, and love form the foundation of fairness, and that the quiet strength of discernment can guide a kingdom to peace. The sun rose each day over Jerusalem, bringing warmth and light to the city, and as it set, a calm settled over the palace, over the streets, and over the hearts of the people. Each day, they carried with them the knowledge that true wisdom, tempered by compassion and guided by God, could preserve life, honor love, and reveal the truth hidden within every heart. As the days and months passed, the story of Solomon's judgment continued to echo throughout Jerusalem and beyond. It became more than just a tale of a single case. It became a guiding principle that shaped how people lived and related to one another. Parents shared it with their children at bedtime, their voices gentle, soft, and steady, teaching lessons of love, patience, and discernment. Each telling was a lullaby of understanding, encouraging children to notice what was hidden beneath appearances, to care for the vulnerable, and to value truth above all. In homes across the city, families would gather around simple hearths in the evenings. The flames danced softly, casting warm light upon faces filled with curiosity and wonder. Fathers spoke in calm, measured tones, recounting the day when the king had discerned the living child's true mother, emphasizing the wisdom that comes from careful thought and a compassionate heart. Mothers smiled gently, nodding, as they tucked their little ones into blankets and whispered prayers of protection and guidance. The palace itself remained a center of gentle order. Courtiers, guards, and servants moved with quiet precision, their steps measured, their voices soft, reflecting the calm dignity of the king's rule. Solomon continued to sit upon his throne, listening patiently to every dispute, observing every gesture, and understanding every unspoken plea. Each judgment carried the subtle influence of the story of the two women. The knowledge that life is sacred, that love is revealing, and that a discerning heart can see what the eyes alone cannot perceive. Visitors from distant lands arrived steadily, eager to witness the wisdom that had become famous. Some came with questions, seeking resolution to disputes in their own towns and villages. Others came simply to observe, hoping to learn from the king whose insight could perceive truth even when it was hidden. Envoys spoke in hushed tones of the judgment they had heard about, marveling at how the young king had revealed the mother through the quiet logic of love and compassion. Even beyond the city, in the surrounding villages and fields, the influence of Solomon's wisdom shaped daily life. Shepherds and traders, neighbors and families began to approach conflicts with patience, remembering the lesson of the two women. They learned to pause, to listen carefully, to consider motives and hearts before acting. They practiced fairness and kindness, knowing that sometimes the quietest, most gentle approach reveals truth more clearly than force or anger. The child, whose life had been preserved, grew surrounded by care and warmth. Each day brought small joys, soft laughter, gentle rocking, the quiet rhythm of feeding and tending. His mother, always mindful of the day when wisdom had preserved him, spoke to him of love, honesty, and courage. She described the king's judgment not as a frightening memory, but as a story of protection, clarity, and the way understanding can bring peace to even the most troubling situations. As the boy grew, he observed the kindness and patience of his mother and learned the quiet lessons of life through her actions. He saw that courage often requires letting go, that love sometimes means surrendering one's claim, and that true wisdom is gentle yet powerful. These lessons were embedded in his heart, becoming part of who he was, carrying forward the story of the judgment in his very being. Within the palace, Solomon continued to guide his people with patience and insight. Each day brought new challenges, new disputes, and new opportunities to demonstrate the depth of discernment that God had granted him. And with every case, the memory of the two women and the child guided him. It reminded him to consider the heart, to weigh love against desire, and to always seek justice tempered with mercy. The mother, now older and wiser, continued to share the story with her child and with others. She spoke not with urgency or fear, but with the gentle certainty of one who had seen the power of understanding and compassion firsthand. She reminded listeners that love can guide choices, that patience can reveal what is hidden, and that true wisdom always considers the heart. And so, the story of the living child and the two women did not remain a single moment in time. It became a lasting lesson, shaping hearts, guiding actions, and bringing calm understanding to the people of Israel. Each telling strengthened the quiet rhythm of life, reinforcing the principle that love and discernment, combined with divine guidance, preserve what is precious and reveal what is true. The palace continued its work, the city continued to thrive, and the people carried forward the lessons of the king's wisdom. The sun rose and set over Jerusalem, bathing the city in warmth and light, while the story of Solomon's judgment continued to echo softly in the hearts of all who heard it. The lesson was clear. Life is sacred, truth is revealed by love, and wisdom guided by God brings peace that endures beyond a single day, beyond a single generation, and into the hearts of all who choose to listen. The story of Solomon's judgment traveled quietly yet powerfully, reaching far beyond the walls of Jerusalem. Traders carried the tale across deserts and mountains, Merchants whispered it in distant marketplaces, and travellers recounted it to curious ears in villages and cities that had never before heard of such insight. It was not a story of battle or conquest, but of a power far greater, the power of wisdom guided by God, a strength that could preserve life, honour love, and reveal truth. Leaders from distant lands sent envoys to Jerusalem, hoping to witness firsthand the king whose name had spread so far and whose judgment had become legendary. They came with gifts of rare spices, fine linens, precious metals, and exotic animals. They expected a ruler of authority and grandeur, but what they found was a king whose presence was calm, whose demeanour was gentle, and whose wisdom flowed like a quiet river, reaching into the hearts of those who sought guidance. In the palace, Solomon continued to hear cases, both great and small. Each day brought new matters of trade, inheritance, and disputes among neighbours. Yet the story of the two women remained present in his mind, a reminder that the heart often holds the truth that is invisible to the eye. His judgments reflected this understanding, weaving together fairness, insight, and compassion in every decision. The people of Israel observed this, and their trust in their king deepened. They realized that wisdom was not measured by wealth or strength, but by the ability to see beyond appearances, to hear beyond words, and to understand the quiet motivations of the heart. Children grew up learning the story as a lesson. Parents carried it in their hearts, and neighbours spoke of it in soft, respectful tones. It became a part of daily life, influencing actions and choices, creating a culture of thoughtfulness and care. Even the surrounding nations marveled at the stories of Solomon's judgments. Ambassadors recounted the tale of the living child with admiration, sharing it with their own people as an example of the extraordinary insight of a ruler guided by God. It inspired not fear, but respect, not division, but curiosity about the source of such profound understanding. Within Jerusalem, the palace became a place not only of justice, but of learning. People from near and far came to witness how a ruler could combine knowledge with compassion, authority with humility, and discernment with patience. They observed the calm rhythm of life within the walls, the gentle movements of the servants, the quiet attention of the guards, and the serene presence of the king. All of it reflected a larger lesson, that true power is expressed not through force, but through wisdom, that preserves life and nurtures love. The child who had been saved by Solomon's judgment grew, surrounded by the quiet strength of his mother and the gentle influence of a world shaped by wisdom. Each day he experienced the love and protection that had been his from the moment of his birth. Though he did not fully understand the events of the past, he felt the safety, warmth, and trust that filled his life, a living testament to the king's insight. The mother, mindful of the story that had shaped her son's life, continued to teach him lessons of patience, honesty, and courage. She told him of the day when love revealed truth, and she reminded him that wisdom guided by care can preserve what is most precious. These lessons were imbued in his being, shaping not only his understanding of the world, but also his gentle approach to others, reflecting the same compassion that had guided Solomon's judgment. Across Israel, communities adopted the quiet principles demonstrated by the king, Disputes were approached with care, conversations were tempered with understanding, and decisions were made with consideration for the hearts involved. The story of the two women became more than a tale. It became a framework for peaceful living, a guide for discerning what is right and just in every situation. The sun rose and set over Jerusalem, casting golden light over the city and bathing the streets in warmth. Each day, the people remembered that true wisdom is patient, that love is revealing, and that discernment guided by God illuminates what the eyes alone cannot see. The palace, serene and steady, remained a center of this quiet power, its halls echoing with the calm rhythm of life, shaped by insight, care, and the preservation of what is most dear. Even the smallest events in the kingdom were influenced by this wisdom. Merchants negotiated fairly, neighbors shared resources thoughtfully, and families nurtured one another with consideration. The presence of a ruler whose heart understood the hearts of others set a tone for the entire land, creating a harmony that was subtle yet profound, like the soft rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. Through all of this, the story of the two women and the living child endured, carried in whispers, taught in homes, and remembered in the quiet moments of reflection. It reminded all who heard it that life is sacred, that truth can be hidden yet revealed, and that wisdom guided by love and God's insight is a light that shines through every darkness, reaching far beyond the walls of any palace. And so, Solomon's fame as a wise and compassionate king grew, not only in Jerusalem but across nations. His judgments became legendary. Stories passed from person to person, generation to generation, teaching the values of discernment, patience, and care. Every decision, every word spoken in judgment, echoed the principle that had been revealed in the case of the living child, that true wisdom is gentle, perceptive, and life-affirming. The legacy of that day, the quiet miracle of understanding that had saved a child's life, continued to shape the world. It became an example of how authority can be wielded with kindness, how love can reveal hidden truths, and how a single act of insight can ripple across generations, influencing hearts and guiding lives in ways that endure long after the events themselves have passed. The story of Solomon and the two women became timeless, a soft, flowing river of wisdom that shaped hearts, homes, and nations. Each sunrise in Jerusalem brought new opportunities to witness the subtle power of discernment and compassion, and each sunset left a quiet reminder that wisdom guided by God is eternal, gentle, and ever-present. As time moved on, the land of Israel settled into a harmony that could almost be felt in the air. It was as if the judgment of that single day had planted a seed that continued to grow in the hearts of the people, spreading like roots beneath the soil, unseen yet powerful. The story of the two mothers and the living child was no longer just a memory spoken in hushed tones in the markets or repeated around the glow of evening lamps. It had become something deeper, a living truth woven into the fabric of the nation. In Jerusalem, the palace remained steady upon its hill, its walls gleaming in the golden warmth of the sun by day and glowing softly under the silver touch of the moon by night. The great halls, once filled with the sound of disputes and arguments, now echoed with a calm sense of order, for the wisdom of the king had brought clarity and trust. People approached their disagreements differently now. They paused before speaking. They listened before judging. And they remembered the story that had captured the heart of their land. The story where truth was not proven by words alone, but by the depth of love willing to sacrifice for another. Travelers continued to arrive from far-off places, drawn by the stories they had heard in distant lands. They came by caravan, their camels carrying goods through the heat of the desert, their faces eager with curiosity. They came by ship, sailing across blue waters, their sails billowing in the wind like wings of white birds. And when they entered the courts of King Solomon, they were greeted by a serenity unlike any they had known before. For here was not the noise of war, not the clamour of endless ambition, but the quiet order of a kingdom guided by discernment and peace. The visitors spoke in many tongues, sharing tales of their homelands, yet again and again the conversation returned to the judgment that had become a beacon for all who longed for justice. They asked the king how he had known, how he had seen through the words to the truth hidden beneath. Solomon, with the same gentle calm that marked his every word, would tell them what he always knew, that wisdom comes from God, and those who ask with a pure heart shall receive the light to guide their steps. The people of Israel saw these visitors and marveled at the way the world now looked toward Jerusalem, not with fear but with wonder. Children running through sunlit courtyards would stop to listen when they heard travelers speaking of their king with admiration. They would smile with quiet pride, for the story of the two mothers was their story too, a tale they carried in their hearts like a precious treasure. And in homes across the land, parents told the story to their little ones as the shadows of evening lengthened and the stars began to bloom in the sky. They spoke in soft voices, weaving the tale slowly, letting every word sink like gentle rain into the soil of young hearts. They told of a king who asked for wisdom rather than riches or power, of a judgment that revealed the truth when all seemed hidden, and of a love so deep it was willing to let go for the sake of life. The children listened with wide eyes, their imaginations painting pictures of the great hall, the calm face of the king, and the moment when love spoke louder than pride. This story shaped their thoughts, their choices, their dreams. They grew up knowing that true strength was not in force but in understanding, that leadership was not in commanding but in caring, and that love, pure and selfless, could illuminate even the darkest confusion. These lessons passed quietly from generation to generation, like a flame gently handed from one lamp to another, never dimming, always glowing with a steady light. As the years unfolded, Jerusalem flourished. The city's markets bustled with life, their stalls bright with colours of spices, fruits, and woven cloths. The fragrance of frankincense and myrrh drifted through the streets, mingling with the laughter of children and the songs of merchants. In the fields, the harvest grew plentiful, golden waves of grain bending softly under the wind like a sea of blessings. Peace reigned in the land, not because of walls or armies alone, but because the heart of the kingdom beat with wisdom, and that wisdom flowed into every corner of life. The child whose life had been spared by Solomon's judgment grew strong, his laughter like music in his mother's home. Though he could not remember the day that had changed everything, its shadow lay gentle upon his life, shaping his future in unseen ways. He grew knowing he was loved, cherished beyond measure, and in his eyes shone the brightness of a soul protected by truth. His mother's heart never ceased to thank God for the mercy that had come through the wisdom of the king. She told him, when he was old enough to understand, of the moment when her love was tested and found true, of the day when her willingness to let go had saved him, and he listened in silence, feeling the weight and wonder of a love so strong. Beyond Israel, nations watched and wondered. Stories of Solomon's wisdom continued to flow like rivers across the earth, reaching palaces and humble villages alike. Leaders spoke of it in councils, scholars wrote of it on scrolls, and poets wove it into verses that were sung in distant lands. It became not only a record of a king's judgment, but a symbol of something eternal, that wisdom guided by love can save, can heal, can bring light where there is shadow. And so the kingdom rested under skies of deep blue by day and fields of stars by night, secure in the knowledge that its foundation was strong. Not strong in might or riches alone, but strong in the quiet, unshakable power of truth and understanding. And from that strength, peace flowed outward like ripples upon a still lake, touching lives far beyond the walls of the palace, far beyond the borders of the land, until the whole world knew that in the heart of Jerusalem sat a king who ruled not only with power, but with wisdom that reflected the heart of God. The story of the two mothers and the living child endured through the turning of seasons, through the rise and fall of days, like a melody that never fades. And with every retelling, it carried the same gentle truth, that love, when it is real, gives all, and that wisdom, when it is sought from above, brings life and peace that last beyond all measure of time. The story did not fade with time. It grew deeper, like a tree whose roots drink from hidden waters. What had happened in the king's chamber that day was not a single judgment. It was a seed planted in the soul of a nation. And from that seed, branches stretched wide, offering shade and shelter to all who came near, their leaves whispering of truth and peace. The people of Israel began to understand something profound, that wisdom is not a momentary spark, but a steady flame that lights the way for all who walk in its glow. And because they saw this flame shining in their king, their trust in him grew like the dawn spreading across the hills. They rose each morning knowing that justice lived among them, that their ruler cared not for appearances but for the hidden truths of the heart. There were days when merchants gathered in the market, their voices mingling like the hum of bees in a sunlit meadow. They spoke of trade and harvest, of spices and silver, but sooner or later the talk would drift back to the judgment of Solomon. A man might pause in his bargaining to tell the tale again, his hands gesturing gently as he painted the picture of the two mothers, the child, and the words that cut through the shadows like a shaft of light. Another would nod in quiet wonder, as though hearing it for the first time, and say, "Truly, the wisdom of God is in this land." And in the evenings, when the day's labor was done, families gathered by the soft glow of oil lamps. The children, tired yet eager, leaned close as their parents spoke the story slowly, their voices tender as if handling something precious. They told of the king who sought wisdom instead of riches, of the day when two women stood before him, and of the truth that love revealed when nothing else could. The little ones listened wide-eyed, their hearts drinking in every word like thirsty soil receiving rain. They did not yet know the weight of such truths, but they felt them, deep and still, shaping the quiet places of their souls. Far beyond the hills of Judah, the tale travelled like a gentle wind. Caravans carried it across deserts, over golden sands that shimmered beneath the sunday. Ships bore it across the sparkling seas, their sails catching not only the breeze but whispers of the story that stirred curiosity in distant lands. In far-off courts, rulers heard and marvelled, saying to one another, "There is a king in Israel, whose wisdom is like a river flowing from heaven." And so they sent their envoys, men of learning and honour, bearing gifts of rare spices and precious stones, hoping to glimpse the heart of the one who could judge with such clarity and grace. When these envoys entered Jerusalem, they found a city alive with peace. They saw gardens blooming in quiet corners, heard the laughter of children echoing along sunlit courtyards, and smelled the fragrance of figs and olives drifting through the warm air. They expected to find a king clothed in pride, seated upon a throne of arrogance, but what they found instead was a man serene as a still pool, his words gentle yet strong, his presence like the calm before dawn. And when they spoke with him, they felt the weight of wisdom in his gaze, a wisdom that did not crush but lifted, that did not boast but blessed. In the palace halls, Solomon continued his work. Each case that came before him was different from the last, some simple, some tangled like vines, but he approached them all with the same steady heart. He listened, he pondered, and he judged, not with haste but with patience, for he knew that in the quiet of listening, truth often whispers its secrets. And those who watched learned from him. They saw that justice is not loud, that wisdom does not rush, and that peace flows from understanding. As the seasons turned, the land prospered. Fields yielded grain like golden seas beneath the sky. Vines draped heavy with grapes, their sweetness promising joy in the days to come. Olive trees lifted their silvery leaves to the wind, and fig trees dropped their tender fruit upon the earth. The rivers ran clear, and the hills stood clothed in green. It was as if creation itself mirrored the harmony that wisdom had brought to the hearts of men. Yet through all this beauty and abundance, the story of the two women remained like a gentle thread, binding the nation together in shared memory. It was told in songs by shepherds beneath the stars, in whispers by mothers rocking their children to sleep, in the laughter of children playing beneath the walls of Jerusalem, and every telling carried the same quiet truth, that love which is true gives all, even to the point of letting go, and that wisdom, when sought from God, is a light that never dims. The child whose life had been spared grew taller with each passing year. His laughter filled the home of his mother, and his hands learned the work of the land. Sometimes, when the evening was soft and the shadows long, she would tell him once more of the day that had saved him, her voice trembling not with sorrow but with gratitude. He would listen with wonder, his young heart trying to grasp the depth of a love so strong and a wisdom so pure. And though he could not yet fully understand, something deep within him knew that his life was a a gift wrapped in sacrifice and mercy. And so the years unfolded, quiet and golden, beneath skies that stretched like a canopy of peace. From Jerusalem, the music of wisdom spread outward, touching lands and lives far beyond the reach of the eye. It became more than a tale. It became a testament, a lamp set upon a hill, shining for all who sought the way of truth. If you listen closely now, across the centuries, you can almost hear it still, the echo of that day, the stillness of the court, the voice of the king, the gasp of a mother whose love was revealed in a single breath. It lingers like a fragrance on the wind, soft yet enduring, a whisper that says, "Seek wisdom, love deeply, and let truth be your guide." And now, as the quiet of night wraps gently around you, let your heart rest in the calm assurance that wisdom is near, like the steady glow of a lamp in the darkness. Let the story cradle your thoughts like a mother's arms, tender and sure. You are safe, you are loved, and all is well. Sleep now, dear soul, and dream of peace that flows like a river, of light that never fades, and of love that holds all things together. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with calm comfort and the soft music of a world made whole by wisdom. As the story of the two women and the wise judgment of King Solomon lingers in our thoughts, it becomes clear that this is not just an old account from the pages of history. It is a story filled with meaning that speaks softly into our hearts even now. Tonight, let us take time to think about what these lessons are and how they can bring peace and guidance into our lives. The first and perhaps most beautiful lesson is the power of love that sacrifices. When the real mother of the child stood before the king and heard that terrible suggestion to divide the baby, her heart spoke louder than her pride. She chose to give up her claim so that her baby could live. That is love in its purest form. It is not about winning an argument or proving a point. It is about caring so deeply for someone else that you are willing to let go for their good. In our own lives, there will be moments when we face choices that test our hearts. There may be times when love asks us to step back. Perhaps it is in a friendship, where letting go of an argument preserves peace. Perhaps it is in a family, where showing patience speaks louder than harsh words. When we choose love over pride, we find a deeper kind of victory, the kind that fills the soul with quiet joy. Another lesson that shines through this story is the value of wisdom that comes from God. King Solomon asked God for wisdom, and when this difficult case came before him, that wisdom was like a bright light in the middle of confusion. He did not rush or act in anger. He listened carefully, he thought deeply, and then he spoke words that revealed the truth. This reminds us that when life feels confusing, when choices seem hard and voices pull us in different directions, we can seek wisdom too. Wisdom begins with listening. It begins with slowing down, breathing deeply, and asking for guidance with a humble heart. It is easy to react in haste, but when we pause, when we ask God, or simply quiet our minds for a moment, the answer often becomes clearer. There is also a quiet lesson here about honesty. In the story, one woman spoke the truth, while the other clung to a lie. The truth stood firm, and in the end, it was revealed. Lies may seem strong for a while, but they cannot last forever. Truth, even when it feels small, has a way of shining through like the first rays of dawn breaking the dark sky. In our everyday lives, honesty is a gentle strength. It brings peace to the heart because it carries no hidden weight. And let us not forget the lesson of justice. King Solomon did not take sides without thought. He did not let appearances or assumptions guide him. He listened to both voices, and he judged with fairness. This is a reminder that fairness is a light we can carry too. In our families, in our friendships, in the smallest decisions, fairness brings harmony. When we treat others with fairness, when we listen before we speak, peace follows like a calm river flowing quietly through the land. These lessons are soft, but they are strong. They whisper to us that real strength is not in force, but in love. Real wisdom is not in cleverness, but in humility. Real peace is not in winning, but in understanding. These truths can walk with us into tomorrow and the next day, guiding our steps gently like the soft glow of lanterns on a quiet path. As we breathe slowly now, let these thoughts rest in your heart, like warm blankets on a cool night. Think of the beauty of a love that lets go, the strength of truth, and the peace of wisdom. These are treasures that no one can take away, treasures that make life rich in the ways that truly matter. As we continue our gentle reflection on this remarkable story, let us take another quiet moment to consider the depth of wisdom that Solomon displayed and the timeless lessons that still speak to our hearts today. This part of the story invites us not only to admire what happened in that ancient room, but also to bring those truths close to the rhythms of our own lives. When the two women stood before King Solomon, they were not just strangers in a dispute. They were human beings, each with feelings, fears, and fragile hopes. Life for them was not easy. They were mothers, and in their hearts they carried both love and pain. In the stillness of that moment before the king, all they had was their voice, their plea, and the truth they believed. Solomon, with a heart full of understanding, chose to listen deeply before speaking. Listening is a lesson that shines so brightly here. The king could have rushed to judgment, but he did not. He gave space for each woman to speak. He let their words fill the silence, and only then did he respond with a decision that revealed truth in a way no ordinary judge could have done. How often do we find ourselves in situations where listening first could change everything? Sometimes, when tempers rise or misunderstandings come, what the other person truly needs is not a quick answer, but the comfort of being heard. There is a softness in wisdom that this story shows us. Solomon's wisdom was not harsh or cold. It was steady and calm, like a gentle stream that finds its way through stones. It did not break or destroy. Instead, it flowed toward truth with grace and understanding. Perhaps this is something we can bring into our own lives. When choices come, when voices compete, when hearts feel divided, may we pause and let wisdom guide us gently, just as Solomon did. The story also reminds us about love, a love so deep that it was willing to let go to protect another life. The true mother's heart was revealed in that single moment when she cried out for the child to live, even if it meant she would lose him. That is what love looks like when it is pure and selfless. It seeks life over possession, well-being over pride. In our everyday lives, love sometimes asks us to do the same, to give when it is hard, to step back when it is necessary, to put someone else's good above our own desires. As you think about this, imagine what it means to love like that. To love a friend enough to forgive, even when hurt lingers. To love a family member enough to let go of harsh words and choose peace instead. To love yourself enough to rest and let grace cover your worries. These gentle truths can light our way, even when the night feels dark and quiet. And let us not forget that wisdom is something we can seek too. It is not only for kings or great leaders. Wisdom is a gift that comes when we ask for it, when we open our hearts to learn, and when we walk humbly through life. Solomon asked God for wisdom because he knew he could not lead without it. In the same way, we can whisper a prayer when decisions weigh on us, asking for clarity, for peace, and for a heart that sees what truly matters. As you rest tonight, let these thoughts settle softly in your mind. You do not have to solve everything now. You do not have to carry every burden alone. There is grace waiting for you, and there is wisdom that comes gently when the soul is quiet and trusting. Take a slow breath now, and let your shoulders relax. Let the calm of this moment remind you that you are cared for, that your heart can find peace, and that tomorrow will bring new light and new hope. The story of Solomon and the two mothers is more than an ancient tale. It is a gentle reminder for us to love deeply, to listen well, and to seek wisdom in all things. When we do, we find that peace has a way of following us, like the soft glow of dawn after the night has passed. And as we let these thoughts settle softly in our minds, there is something more to notice about this story. It shows us the beauty of patience and the gift of listening. King Solomon did not speak quickly. He let the women tell their stories. He heard their words, their emotions, and even what they did not say. Sometimes, wisdom is not about having the right answer immediately. It is about giving time for the truth to rise like the sun after a long night. In our own lives, how often do we rush to answer, to solve, to speak? Yet when we slow down, when we truly listen to others, to our own hearts, and to the gentle voice of God, we find clarity that hurried words cannot bring. Listening is an act of love. It says, "You matter, your voice matters. I will hold space for you." This quiet strength can turn conflicts into conversations and misunderstandings into moments of grace. And then, there is something deeply comforting about knowing that wisdom is not only for kings and rulers, it is for all of us. Wisdom is not locked in palaces or reserved for a chosen few. It comes to those who seek it, who humbly ask for it. You and I can seek wisdom in the simple choices of every day, when to speak and when to stay silent, when to hold on and when to let go, when to wait and when to act. These small choices shape our lives like tiny drops of water carving a river through stone. We can also see how the story reminds us of the sacredness of life. When the real mother gave up her claim to save her baby, she showed that life is more precious than pride. In a world that often pushes us to win, to be first, to prove ourselves right, this story gently whispers that sometimes the greatest victory is choosing life, peace, and kindness over ego. Imagine how many heavy burdens would fall away if more hearts chose this kind of love. The love that values life above being right. The love that can bow low and still stand tall in goodness. And maybe tonight, as we think about these things, we can ask ourselves gentle questions. Where in my life can I choose peace over pride? Is there someone I need to listen to more carefully? Is there a place where truth needs to be spoken kindly? These are not questions to rush through, but to carry softly, like seeds in the soil of the heart. They will grow in time, watered by grace and light. The story of the two women before King Solomon is not loud or complicated, yet it reaches across thousands of years to speak to us here and now. Its wisdom is like a quiet stream, steady, pure, refreshing. When we drink from it, our souls feel lighter, our hearts clearer, our minds calmer. And this calmness is something we can carry into our homes, our work, our relationships. It becomes like a warm light glowing in the windows of our hearts, guiding us when the night feels dark. So tonight, let these lessons wrap around you like a soft blanket. Let them whisper to your heart that love is stronger than pride, that wisdom is stronger than confusion, that truth is stronger than lies, and that fairness is stronger than favoritism. These gentle truths will never fade. They will stay with you, like the stars that shine quietly above the world, night after night, never demanding attention, yet always there, always steady, always bright. And now, as we take another deep breath together, feel the calmness settle even more deeply within you. Let every word rest like a feather on still water. You are safe, you are cherished, and you are walking in the light of wisdom and love. As the voices in Solomon's great hall faded and the day came to a close, the story of the two women lived on in the hearts of everyone who had witnessed the king's wisdom. The sunlight that once streamed through the tall windows had now softened into a golden glow, and the marble floors reflected that warm light like ripples of peace upon a calm lake. Outside, the sky was painted with soft shades of amber and rose, a quiet promise that the world, despite its troubles, can still be filled with light and hope. The two women had gone their separate ways, each carrying a different burden in her heart. One carried her living child in her arms, holding him close as if she would never let go. She whispered to him with tears in her eyes, thankful beyond words that her truth had been seen and her love for her little one had not been in vain. Her steps were slow as she left the palace, because her soul was full and overflowing with emotion. She had faced her darkest fear, and now she walked away into the evening with a heart made whole. The other woman walked away too, her steps heavy with silence. No words passed her lips, and yet the story had spoken for itself. Her heart had been laid bare, her lies uncovered like shadows driven away by the Sunday. There is a quiet sadness when truth is revealed, but even in that sadness, there can be a path forward. Perhaps in time, she would learn and grow from what had happened here today. For even in our mistakes, there is a chance for grace, a chance to begin again. And in the great hall King Solomon sat still for a while after they were gone. The court had emptied, and only the soft sound of the evening breeze could be heard through the open doors. The king's heart was calm. He had seen the hand of God guiding him, and he knew that wisdom was not his own but a gift from above. His eyes rested upon the fading light as the shadows grew longer, and his thoughts were full of gratitude. For it is not easy to lead, not easy to judge between people, not easy to weigh the matters of the heart. Yet on this day, justice had been done. The palace slowly became quiet as night approached. Lamps were lit, their flames dancing gently like golden petals in the still air. The fragrance of evening flowers drifted in from the gardens, and the sound of soft footsteps faded down the long corridors. Peace settled upon the house like a tender blanket. And so, dear listener, as we reflect on this story, let it bring comfort to your heart. It is a story of truth, of love, and of wisdom that shines even in difficult times. It reminds us that real love will always reveal itself. Just as the mother who was willing to give up her child to save his life showed the depth of her heart. Love speaks louder than words, and truth stands firm even when tested. Let this thought rest with you as you close your eyes tonight. No matter what trials come, there is always a path of light. There is always a place where peace can enter, even in the middle of confusion. Like Solomon, you too can find wisdom when you seek what is good and true. And like the mother in the story, your love can be the light that leads the way, even when the road feels uncertain. Now, as the stars begin to shimmer in the dark velvet sky, let your soul find rest. Let the quiet of the night wrap around you like the softest blanket, and let your breathing slow, calm, and steady. You are safe. You are loved. The world outside can wait, for this is your time to rest. Close your eyes and let every sound fade into the distance. Let every thought drift away like petals on a gentle stream. There is nothing more you need to do now, except to be still and let peace fill your heart. Sleep will come softly, like the wings of a dove, bringing comfort and calm to every part of you. Good night, dear friend. May your dreams be sweet and your heart light. May tomorrow greet you with kindness and joy. Rest well, and know that you are cherished. Good night, and sleep in perfect peace.